When I was a kid in Brooklyn, I used to go to work with my dad on Saturdays or on holidays or on any days I could go to work with my dad in Bensonhurst. And I'm talking about probably under 10. One of the favorite jobs that I had to do there was when the TBA truck, tires, batteries, and accessories truck, would roll up, and they would roll tires off the back of the truck. It was about a 4-foot drop to the ground, and they would do it with enough force so that tire would come rolling out of the back of the truck, hit the ground, and continue rolling. And it was my job to keep it rolling as it went forward and to make a kind of a 90-degree arc so that we could move the tires into the back where they were stacked or racked, waiting for sale. And I used to really enjoy it. I used to feel it was a responsibility and a good responsibility, and it took skill. it took real skill to know exactly where on the arc of the tire to put the palm of your hand and push to keep it rolling. It was my first introduction to Newtonian physics. And it was interesting because if you hit the tire and pushed too hard and it got ahead of you, or if you didn't catch up to it quickly enough, inevitably it would start to wobble as it lost its momentum and fall over on one side or the other. At which time you learned about one of Newton's other laws of physics, which is that an object in motion, an object at rest rather, tends to stay at rest unless it's otherwise acted upon. I don't know whether Newton said unless otherwise acted upon, but that's Schneider's corollary. Also found out that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, but only if it has help. And I kind of learned that the hard way this last couple of weeks. And one of the reasons that I've been tardy in getting the blog posts out is because I've discovered that there's this Newtonian physics is a real metaphor for life in many respects. It's easier to keep something going. It's easier to keep something going than it is to start it going again, especially after it's stopped. And it's easier to continue with something like a blog like this when you're doing it than it is to stop and then start again, because there are always all kinds of different reasons why you can't or won't or shouldn't or couldn't do it. Life does that to you. Life's what happens when you're making other plans, as Lenin said. And he was right. I mean, there are all kinds of conspiracies that crop up to steal time from you and make it more difficult to do something, even if it's something that you really want to do. And that's one of the reasons you get behind. So this is actually Friday evening, late. It's about 8 o'clock, as I'm sure that you'll see. It is the 3rd of January 2020. Interesting sidebar. Keep this in mind. When you're writing the date from now on, don't just put down 20, as in 2020. Write the whole 4 numbers of the date as in 2020. It would be too easy for someone to take 20 and then add an 01 after it and then, scam you in some way. So that's a free no charge tip that was on TV this morning on Channel 2. And I think it's worth repeating, actually. This is Journal 258. Have to check because I've gotten away from it for so long. And this is T+276, almost 280 days into the transplant. I have to tell you that I mentioned the Newtonian physics and that being a good metaphor because this last hospitalization or pair of hospitalizations really beat me up. They beat me up mentally, and I'm not ashamed to say they beat me up physically. First with the fever, turns out that was the result of the blood clots and the pulmonary embolisms. And then the blood clots and the embolisms themselves, which were difficult, made it very difficult to breathe, and quite frankly were frightening as hell. Not because of the not breathing part of it, oddly enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough to take that into consideration, but because of the fact that they could have migrated and they could have caused real mischief in the body. And that realization is difficult. You know, it's easy to read about it or to hear about it, but it's a little bit different when you go through it yourself. So I guess the real lesson here, if there is a lesson at all, is if you're doing something and it's something that you love to do, then keep doing it. Don't stop, because getting started again is a lot more difficult than you think it'll be, because there'll be a conspiracy of odds and ends to keep you from fulfilling whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Make sure you do it, because once you start, it's easier to continue than it is to start. So on that happy note, I will leave you for this evening. Hope to see you tomorrow as we try and get started again, as I was saying. Stay well. Take care. Missed you guys.